The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by Reach Out Community Center. Reach out and help one child at a time.
Well, my wife, back home in Arizona, her family, her mom and dad has fostered countless kids, adopted, I believe 5 now, I lose count. So I've seen firsthand what it can do for a child that has no chance, just comes into the world with having really no chance of having a good situation, and to see a kid get into a nice household, go to school, have good people around them, and then they grow up to be, young adults, and see how it can work out for them. It's definitely again, when you've seen it firsthand, it definitely is. It impacts you a little bit.
Hi, I'm Whitney Reynolds, and today's topic is foster care. Childhood is supposed to be the best years of your life, but what if you were taken from your home with no place to go? You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show.
When I look at my life and where I am, perhaps the best example that I could ever give to you was a conversation I had with my 6-year-old son. And we read every morning, and he was sitting on my lap, and out of nowhere, I thought he was going to ask me a question about the lion and the mouse. That's what we were reading. And he paused, and he looked up at me, and he said, "Daddy, when you were a little boy, did you have a daddy?" And I paused for a moment. I was expecting to have to answer that question a little bit later. And then I decided, well, let me do what no one ever did with me. Let me tell him the truth. And I said, "No, son, when I was a little boy, I didn't have a daddy." And his brow furrowed, and because he really didn't understand that answer. And then his eyes brightened, and he said, as only a child could say, "Maybe next time you'll have a daddy."
Steve Pemberton, who is the author of A Chance in the World, a book written about his personal journey through foster care. Well, we are here with Steve Pemberton, who wrote A Chance in the World, and you were actually in the foster care system and are a true success story of how no matter what your circumstances, you can overcome.
I was. My entire childhood was spent in the foster care system, and I fell really in between the gaps of the foster care system. Stayed with one particular family for over a decade, and it was a very, very difficult environment to grow up in.
When did you go into the foster care system?
At 3.5 years old, I was taken from my mother a few days after Christmas.
Did you have siblings as well, and was everyone put into the foster care?
I did have siblings, although I didn't know that until many, many years later.
Because at 3,
yes,
you didn't
although
really
I had this impression, this sense of children around me, but I didn't know that those were my siblings.
So you got put into the system at 3, and did you move home a lot when you were younger?
A period of time between 3 and 5 years old, I was in a lot of different homes. I can't remember how many exactly. And then I landed in one place at the age of 5, and that's where I would stay for the remainder of my childhood.
Wow, and that was not a good place.
No, these were people who took me in for money. I knew it and I felt it. They were masterful at disguising what was really unfolding in the home, so it was very difficult for me to share or have anyone believe the situation that I was in.
How did you overcome that?
Well, early on I developed a love of reading. I loved mysteries in particular because my own life was such a mystery. Where were my parents? Where was my family? Why had I been left in this home? And so when I grew up, I wanted to be a detective because I thought it would help me figure it all out. But there was another effect that reading had on me, and it gave me a vision, a sense of a different life than the one that I was living on a day-to-day basis. So I decided that I was going to have a life one day like the characters in the books that I read about.
How did you end up going to Boston College and now exactly where you are today with Walgreens? I mean, you are doing huge things. So what was that major step?
Well, adversity activated me actually, and that's not a narrative that we commonly view adversity through. But the more difficult the situation and circumstance I was in, the more elevated I became. So my reaction to most things was I would study harder, I would read more. I became more and more determined, largely because of that vision that I had earlier. So I knew in the 7th grade that I was going to college. I was going to Boston College. You couldn't dissuade me from that. It was just a matter of determining what steps I needed to take to get there. And that is one of the untold narratives of adversity. Most people experience adversity at some point in their life. But ultimately, you're measured by how you respond to it, not the fact that it happened at all. And for me, I always wanted to be measured more by accepting that challenge. Sometimes, you know, in the quiet of my own heart, the man that I am wishes I could go back and talk to the boy that I was and tell him something that he didn't know at the time. And it was that, one, you are in a situation that a lot of children are in, and there are people who do overcome it. I didn't know that at 12, 13 years old. And that's some of the narrative of our society, that we don't often share the struggle that we come from, or there's excessive focus on the tragedy. So part of my motivation for writing A Chance in the World was to show that from this not a chance in the world definition or prediction of what my life was going to be like can come success. But it comes because of those things. I think fast because I learned how to think fast. I developed a survivor's instinct and a survivor's skill set. So when I'm at a company now like Walgreens, that's one of the largest in America, I'm able to think just as fast as required to be in a successful company. But that was a skill set that I developed a long time ago.
So if we've talked to people that are maybe thinking about being a foster parent, we've spoke to a lot of different things today. But what would you say to the child that might be in that home?
That you have a purpose and a place here, even if it's not immediately clear to you. And that if you grow up in a very difficult situation, circumstance, one thing you can't do is ask, well, what did I do wrong? Because you're a child and you didn't do anything wrong. But there will also come a time that you're going to have to take responsibility for the situation and circumstance that you've come from. And while our society is often forgiving, we don't have a particularly long runway of patience with anyone who uses excuses. So you may have inherited a bad circumstance. But we're most measured by how we build. We're builders as a society first. And know that you have this opportunity to build something, to put your own original stamp on something. Sometimes there's a legacy of dysfunction that had nothing to do with you. You just regrettably so happen to be next in line, but you have this unique power to put an end to it.
It's been widely reported that there's a huge need for foster care parents in the United States. How do you propose we go about raising awareness on this?
Well, I think it's really important to have some bigger celebrities or opportunities behind it, and really work with the people that can't have kids. Some of the people that maybe are going to the adoption agencies, it's a much quicker way to do a foster parent, and just reach out in the communities and work together to find those kids homes.
Well, I think educating people is normally the biggest step. So part of raising awareness is also, I would do events and fundraisers to explain the need for it, explain what the foster care system is like, and the need for really good homes. I think there's so many kids out there who are separated from siblings and scared about being away from their home, even though their home wasn't unsafe. That's all they know. So I think part of it is educating everybody on what that looks like and the need for those safe homes.
Education is just the most important thing, letting everybody know that there is a need out there, and also I think raising the awareness of adoption is really important to that question as well.
Being in the United States, I think there's a lot of resources out there, and there are people out there that don't know about fostering. So even just creating awareness by creating maybe some type of run, or just contacting current foster parents and learning more about what they've been doing and what resource they can provide for everyone.
I think actually highlighting some of the families that are foster parents currently and showing the success that they've had and showing other people that it's actually doable, I think that will raise a lot of awareness and help other people maybe take that next step.
I think social media would be a great outlet for people to be aware of foster care.
It is now time for your social sizzle. I'm here with Michael McDermott. Now, he does have a foster care connection, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. But before we do, I got to tell you a little bit about his resume, guys. We have a big name in the house. We have a singer-songwriter with the top 35 hit.
Yeah.
We also have a namesake in a movie.
I do.
Have been on Conan, and you're getting ready to leave for Germany in a few hours.
I am.
So glad we got you in the studio with us.
I know. And it's great to be with you. And yeah, so it's a busy year for me, and very excited about the next few months for sure.
You've been doing this for 20, 21 years?
20 years, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you how old you are,
No,
but I'm doing the
answer.
math in my head
You could
right
ask,
now.
but I'm not going to.
So you're leaving for Germany.
Yes.
You're going to Italy after that. You're doing a tour.
Yeah.
What kind of music do you play?
Well, it's singer-songwriter stuff, basically. It's been, like, when I first started, it was kind of too folky for Pearl Jam and Nirvana that were starting right around then. But the Americana music has come around, so I've waited a long time to be this busy. But no, it's been good. I had a lot of success early. I got signed very young. And, but I was, so young that it was kind of hard to figure out, navigate myself in the music industry. And the music industry was changing too. With, right then it was like CDs going into a lot of digital stuff. And like now there's hardly any really physical product. So it's been a period of transition for everybody. And so I'm just, taking the punches and moving on.
Right. You've even been mentioned in a few books.
I have. Yeah, Stephen King is a fan of mine, and he used lyrics of mine. I was playing basketball at my sister's house, and I got a call. And, I take my basketball very seriously. And so she yelled my name, and I said, can't you see I'm in the middle of a game? And she said, Stephen King's on the phone.
Woo.
And I thought he was maybe looking for Michael McDonald. So when I got on the phone, he was like, hey, Michael, Steve King. And I asked him, I said, you sure you're not looking for the Doobie Brother? He's like, no, I know exactly who I'm looking for. But it was weird to think of a guy finding my sister's phone number somehow, which I figured if you have that much power, you could probably.
Well, we've been talking about CDs today. We were also talking about the day of phone books, too.
Yes, yeah, right, yeah. My sister, I don't know how he found it. I'm sure he has connections at the CIA or the Pentagon.
He probably does.
Right.
Well, we have you on today because we are talking about foster care.
Yes,
and we are going to have an organization that works with foster care on the show a little bit later, but you actually did a whole CD for them.
I did. I had done a show for UCAN, which is an amazing organization. They've been around since 1866 or something like that, which is just a testament to the power. And the amazing thing about that, I'm sure you'll probably address this later, is that they not only are a bastion or a safe haven for children that have been traumatized or abused, but that they kind of, and I use this word carefully, rehabilitate their way of thinking, because there's a cyclical nature of abuse and trauma that perpetuates itself over and over. And so what they do, they don't only just offer shelter, that they try to make these kids future leaders. They try to go one step beyond just having a safe home for them.
And so when you met them, how did you end up creating a CD for them?
Well, it was I didn't know, because they wanted me to work with this hip hop group, and that was a little out of my comfort zone, So, but I'd had a song, "Lift Up Your Heart," which was kind of, which is actually from the Catholic Mass that I plagiarized. Oh. And so we just got together, Fred and Jason from they're at UCAN and Ulick Voices, and it was great. And it was just
It's called Lift Up Your Heart.
Your
heart. Did you write that song specifically for them, or did you have kids in mind when you wrote it?
Yeah, they told me about it, and getting to know, because then they asked me to be on the board, which was a very proud moment in my life, and I don't know what, they don't ask that much of me,
Right.
I would like to make all decisions for UCAN, but
but they're going to keep you just making the CDs.
They just kind of keep me, like most parties, people kind of want me there, but just kind of stay over there.
So now the CD is out, and it is Lift Up Your Heart, and it is just impacting not only that organization, but other kids that get to hear it.
Yeah, thank you. I hope so. I mean, what they do is just really incredible, and it was a no-brainer for me.
Lift up your heart. Lift up your heart. Lift up your heart.
Zach Schrantz is the president of UCAN, an organization that strives to build strong youth and families through compassionate healing, education, and empowerment. Not only does he practice these values at work, but also in the home. In 2010, Zach and his wife decided to try foster care and later adopted a son. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thank you very much.
So you are no stranger to foster care, today's topic.
I am not.
So you started out as a caseworker.
I've been working professionally in foster care for more than 20 years, started as a caseworker here in Chicago.
So what made you get into foster care, per se?
It was really just a matter of probably a combination of wanting to do something with meaning, a sense of social responsibility, and some connection with my faith.
So when you're a caseworker, how does that work in the foster care system?
A caseworker's responsibility is to really ensure the overall well-being of each child and to make sure that they are being taken care of, that they are progressing in school, that they have the medical and mental health and recreational needs that they deserve.
So you went from being a caseworker to actually taking on a foster child.
Yeah, so I had been, my wife and I had been interested in foster care for more than 20 years, and really it always seemed like the right time to do it later. And about 4 years ago, later became now, and we started going through training classes, and it's about a 4 or 5 month process, which is very good because it gives you a sense of time to just prepare for what you're going to be taking on.
And this is not the first child in the home when you decided to do the foster care. You actually have 2 biological children.
I have 2 biological children. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I have a 11-year-old son.
How did they handle taking in a foster child? Because it's not just you and your wife at this point.
It is not. It changes all the dynamics, and it changes all the dynamics very instantly. Both my children were very interested and anxious to have Dorian come into our home. Our daughter Jessica was in high school at the time, so it didn't impact her as much. She was kind of off doing her thing. She was a good support for Dorian. Patrick was anxious to have a younger brother. I think the reality of having a younger brother was a little bit more than he was expecting, and really us having to learn, all of us have to navigate another person in the home, kind of instant sibling rivalry, and just kind of working through that.
Right, and so you decided to do foster care. You said it was a 4 to 5 month process. Before the time that you actually decided to do it, you said this was always on your heart. Did you kind of prep the family all along? This is something that we'll do in the future?
It was, and I think that also they were working at UCAN for so many years. They were very involved in foster care and kind of knew what Dad did. Also, we had some good friends that became foster parents, and so that helped to get them comfortable with the idea of foster care and became interested in us doing it as well.
We're going to have UCAN on in the next segment, but just to clarify, UCAN's where you started being a caseworker.
UCAN's where I started being a caseworker.
And then you just have grown and grown and grown in your position, and now you're the president.
I'm the president and chief operating officer, yes.
Yeah, so they have been around foster care their whole life.
Yes, they have, yeah.
So you get your foster child, and when did you decide to adopt?
Dorian came to live with us in July of 2010.
Okay.
And it was about a 3-year process to move from foster care to adoption. I think the first couple years were about us getting oriented with Dorian, figuring out what is it he's going to need to succeed. It was clear to us when he came that he was going to need a permanent home, and so we were really looking at what do we need to do to prepare ourselves to provide him with that home.
So going into it, you knew that he would probably need a permanent home. Were your hearts prepared at that point to adopt?
We had gone into this, and in foster care, you want to be, as foster parents, you want to be able to do whatever is in the best interest of that child. And so we went into foster care being prepared to help a child return home to their parents, or then to adopt that child if necessary. It was a bit of a shock to us when we first started with Dorian that we weren't going to have to consider returning him home. It was all going to be focused on how do we help to prepare the home for him to live there permanently.
For folks at home that are thinking about being a foster parent, if there is a permanent situation for a foster, knowing that the child can't go home, can they decline taking that child, or is it one of those things that once you're a foster parent, every kid that needs a home, you can't turn away?
Well, I think it's the important part about foster care is to make sure that you have a good match. Right. And so I think you really need to make sure and know up front what is it that is in the parents' hearts to do and capability of doing, and what's going to be in the interest of that child. And so you want to up front make sure you understand, is there a good match between those two?
How hard was it to actually go through the adoption process from foster care?
So the adoption process, it takes a long time just from a legal perspective and forms and processes, but really the most important part of that process was really us identifying what it is Dorian is going to need long term, and try to look out and say, making sure that we are prepared for meeting his needs long term. Because this is not something that you go into just looking at what's going to happen in the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. This is a permanent commitment that we're making to Dorian.
What were some of the challenges, the biggest challenges with being a foster parent, now a parent of 3?
So being a parent of 3, I think that the biggest thing is being a parent of a foster child is so very different than being a parent of your own child. And I think especially for us, because Dorian came to us when he was 6.5 years old. So he had a long history. He had been in 6 different homes before he came to us. And so he really had no real expectation that we could be trusted, and that we could be permanent, and that we're going to be for real, and that what we're telling him is not something that we're going to turn our back on. And so it took a long time, and it's a continual process and a journey that continues to this day, that really giving him some sense of ability, or some sense of being able to trust the world and being able to trust us as parents.
Well, that's wonderful, though. That's what you would hope at the end of the day, that's part of being a foster parent, is building that trust. And like you said, if you're not going into a permanent situation, hoping that the child's parents, because most of the time when a child is taken out of a home, what are some of the things going on?
It's abuse or neglect. Oftentimes there may be issues of substance abuse. There's often correlations with poverty and loss of job and mental health issues. Very complex issues, and so just the very nature of a child being removed from their parents, it's pretty severe. And so that in and of itself is a very traumatic experience for any child in any family. And so the foster care system has the incredible job of trying to put some of those pieces back together, and the foster parents are just one of those pieces to make that happen.
A huge piece to the puzzle. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Our next guest is Thomas Burke, the CEO of UCAN. UCAN's mission is to build strong youth and families through compassionate healing, education, and empowerment. Tom, thank you so much for coming on. You are the CEO of UCAN. We heard about it in the first segment, but UCAN says it all. You can. Tell us about it.
You can become a future leader. We at UCAN believe that kids who suffer trauma, youth who suffer trauma, can become your future leader. We do that through many, many programs that serve kids from, birth on till emancipation, if you will. So a wide range of services: residential treatments, foster care, special education, counseling programs, teen mom programs, violence prevention programs in the schools. So it's a full array of services, serving over 13,000 kids last year.
13,000 kids. That's amazing. You've been around for over 100 years, so you're no stranger to Chicagoland.
We've been around since the Civil War, so it's almost 145 years that we've actually been in existence. Been an orphanage, serving youth whose folks or his fathers went off to fight in the Civil War, and if something happened to them, the church promised there will be a place for you. St. Paul's Church in the city of Chicago made that commitment. So I think we've been able to keep that commitment to the Chicagoland community for a long time, and are growing indeed. And of course, we know the level of violence that many kids have to suffer because of various situations, because of an abuse and neglect and racism and poverty and everything else. So certainly the need is there, but we think the challenge is there as well. We know there's a lot of good people who care about kids, who engage in foster care. I know that that's an important piece. We serve over 400 kids in foster care, so it's been an area that I think we've just continuously grow and listen to our youth and try to fit the right program for their needs.
How many kids do you have in your foster care program?
We have 405, I believe, today.
Wow. And that all runs through the state and then funnels to you guys?
We actually subcontract out with the state, basically. The state asks us to take responsibility from court intervention, training, finding foster parents, doing everything to make sure there's good, adequate care and support in the foster home. And then so our responsibility is to the foster child, first and foremost, but also the foster parents. And we do that because the state intervenes through the court system, to the judicial system, through abuse and neglect court.
So would you say one of your biggest things in the city is foster care and getting kids in the right home and educating them?
I think that's one of our large programs. We also, however, have a big program with the Chicago Housing Authority in Altgeld Gardens. We serve over 100 kids in our violence prevention initiative. We have a large therapeutic youth home, a residential treatment center for youth. We also have over, I think, close to 900 kids that are in our pregnant and parenting teen program. So foster care is a large program, but it is part of a wide range of programs.
You can really does it all.
You can do a lot. Most importantly, I think if we can build a sense of youth who suffer trauma can become our future leaders, so get them the idea that your future is about leadership. That's the most important thing I think we can do for kids.
Every child deserves a place to call home. For more information on today's show, go to whitneyreynolds.com.
Lift up your heart. Lift up your heart. Lift up your heart. Lift up your heart.
On my road to redemption, etching out a clear path, trying to make good.
The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by Reach Out Community Center. Reach out and help one child at a time.